Objects as runtime state holders. Up to this point, most of the state we discussed has been temporary. Local variables, function parameters, intermediate values. They appear, they change, and they disappear as execution flows. Now we cross an important boundary, state that outlives a single execution path. This is where objects enter the picture. Objects are not a Java feature in the abstract sense. They are a runtime strategy for managing long-lived state. Why objects exist at all? Imagine a backend system that could only use local variables. Every time execution moved, state would need to be passed explicitly, nothing would persist beyond a function call, complexity would explode. Objects exist to solve this exact problem. An object is a container of state, paired with behavior that operates on that state, living independently of any single execution step. This is the moment where backend systems start to look like systems, not scripts. Object versus class, runtime versus blueprint. This distinction is fundamental and often glossed over. A class is not a thing that runs. A class is a blueprint, a specification, a template. An object is what exists at runtime. Every object occupies memory, has its own state, participates in execution. Classes define what could exist. Objects define what actually exists. Backend bugs frequently come from thinking about classes when execution is actually dealing with objects. Construction, the moment state comes into existence. An object does not exist until it is constructed. Construction is a critical execution moment. Memory is allocated, fields are initialized, invariants should become true. If an object is created in an invalid state, everything that follows is compromised. This is why constructors matter, not as syntax, but as state initialization boundaries. Fields versus local variables. Fields and local variables are both storage, but they live very different lives. Local variables, short-lived, tied to execution flow, disappear on return fields. Long-lived, tied to object lifetime, persist across method calls. Confusing the two leads to accidental shared state, memory leaks, and unpredictable behavior. Methods, behavior attached to state. A method is not just a function in a class. A method is behavior that executes in the context of an object, with implicit access to that object's state. This implicit context is powerful and dangerous. It allows clean modeling, but it also enables hidden coupling. Senior engineers are always aware of which state a method can implicitly touch. Method invocation, execution meets state. When a method is invoked, execution transfers, the call stack grows, and the object's state becomes active. This is where control flow and long-lived state intersect. Many subtle bugs appear here. Methods that assume state invariants that no longer hold. Methods called in unexpected orders. Methods executed concurrently on shared objects. Objects do not enforce correctness. They merely centralize state. Identity revisited. Objects as unique entities. Every object has identity. Two objects can have identical field values, behave the same way, but still be different entities. Backend systems care deeply about identity, caches, session tracking, entity management. Identity is a runtime fact, not a design choice. Mental models to lock in. Objects exist to hold long-lived state classes describe. Objects exist. Construction is a critical correctness moment. Fields persist. Locals do not. Methods execute with implicit state access. Method calls, combine execution plus state object identity matters independently of value. If you miss these, object-oriented code becomes deceptive. Common misconception, objects are just data with functions. No, objects are stateful runtime entities with identity, lifetime, and side effects. Treating them as mere data structures leads to fragile systems. Why this matters for backend systems. Backend services are long-running, stateful in subtle ways, accessed concurrently. Objects are the backbone of this reality. If you do not reason explicitly about object lifetime and state, bugs will surface far away from their cause.